might enjoy, like I do, Matthew Parris. He's a journalist who mostly writes for the Times and has written a couple of books and the like. Back in December 2008, he wrote this. Now, a confirmed atheist, I've become convinced of the enormous contribution that Christian evangelism makes in Africa, sharply distinct from the work of secular NGOs, government projects and international aid efforts. These alone will not do. Education and training alone will not do. In Africa, Christianity changes people's hearts. It brings a spiritual transformation. The rebirth is real and the change is good. I was struck when I first read that and was reminded of it, why someone who says they're an atheist would write this way about Christianity. The transformative power, that it really works, even though he writes from the UK and says it only works in Africa. I was reminded of that little quote and looked it up again when I read about what Zachariah, who's John the Baptist's father, says at the birth of his child. In Luke 1:57-80, we have that story recounted. This lady, Elizabeth, who's really too old to have a child, miraculously conceives, and now 9 months later, this baby is born. But Zachariah, the father, has been totally silent, spiritually mute for that entire pregnancy. Mary has her child, and those around her ask, what are you going to call him? And she says, John, which shocks everyone. Normally you'd name a child after somebody who had been in your family line, after the father or grandfather if it was a boy. And she's conjured this name out of left field, out of thin air. John! They're shocked. So much so that they say in sentence 66, what then is this child going to be? They can't compute or get their heads around a child named outside of the family tree. Who is he going to be? And Zachariah, the father, breaks this 9 months long silence by declaring the enormous role that John was going to have. He says in a song in sentence 76, you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of sins. What Zachariah sees about John, his son, is remarkable. That John is going to introduce the one who is going to transform people's lives. That's what Matthew Parris, even as an atheist, has seen in the Christians he's experienced in Africa. Lives radically, fully, entirely changed by the power of knowing Jesus. And this John, this small baby, is going to have the privilege of welcoming this transforming Jesus into the world. I have to say, I've experienced that transformative power of Jesus. I've experienced personally, as Alex, the amazing reality of meeting Jesus and having my life not just change direction, but be placed on an entirely different dimension, made about entirely different things. And in fact, right the way through the Bible, we read of this transformative power of Jesus. I think of a man called John. When Jesus first met him, he gave him the nickname, the Son of Thunder, because he was an angry, untrustworthy young man, a frightening man who could go off like a loose cannon. And Jesus welcomes him, spends time with him. And as John learns to believe in Jesus, his life is totally turned around, so much so that the Son of Thunder gets a new nickname, called the Pillar of the Church. Reliable, trustworthy and strong. Do you see that transformation? Or I think of a man in the Bible called Levi, who was a corrupt civil servant, who allowed, even encouraged the torture of those who wouldn't pay him taxes, and above the taxes, bribery into his coffers. And Levi, this corrupt civil servant, mafia don type character, meets Jesus, and he changes his name to Matthew, which means gift of God, because of the transformative work of Jesus in his life. Or lastly, I think of Peter. Peter, who was so quick to lose his temper, so sharp with his words, so arrogant that he attempted to murder someone. He takes a swipe at someone's neck, but because he's a fisherman, not a soldier, he miscomputes and lops off their ear instead. But that's the kind of man Peter was. He meets Jesus, he's transformed by Jesus, and he's given a new nickname, the Rock, the solid one on which the church will be built. Matthew Paris has seen something in that African Christianity which is true to the Bible, which Zechariah, John's father, saw about John's ministry of announcing Jesus, and it's this: Jesus and Jesus alone has the power to totally transform a human life. Whether you're a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, old or young, educated or not so well schooled, Jesus can change your life in a way that no one else can. And even an atheist journalist can see that power.